All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Devin Proctor from the Department of Commerce. I am serving as a moderator for this session. And there we go. I'll be taking questions through the chat box. So if you have any questions, be sure to enter them in the chat box. And what we'll do is we're going to wait until the end of the presentation, and then I'll read the questions to the presenters. Let's welcome our speakers for today. We have Nathan Peppin from the Community Support He's a Community Support Programs Manager at the Washington State Department of Commerce. And then we have Rich Zwicker. He's in Grants Administration at the Homeownership Division with the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. And I believe Nathan's going to kick things off for us.
Yeah, hi. Hey, Rich, you just want to introduce yourself really quick, or just want to get into it?
Rich Zwicker, Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Been doing foreclosure relief work for probably the past 10 years. Currently as the grants administrator at the commission in the Homeownership Division. Thanks, Nathan.
And I am Nathan Peppin. I work for the Department of Commerce. As Devin mentioned, I run a suite of programs called the Community Support Programs, which include two programs that are centralized on either immigration or citizenship, two sister programs, a relocation assistance program for manufactured homes who are affected by closing parks, and then a relocation coordination program, which is a sister to that same program to kind of coordinate those services. And then the foreclosure fairness program, which the combination of the Housing Finance Commission, OCLA, which is the Office of Civil Legal Aid, and Commerce have had a long-standing relationship with the foreclosure fairness program. And for the Housing Assistance Fund, we are effectively using that network to try and deliver these funds in a slightly more meaningful way. And so that is me, and then we will go ahead and get started with the presentation. Pop that up. Just because you're the only one I can hear, Rich, can you see the presentation now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So, work session, Housing Washington. Today's October 5th, 2021. So the Homeowner Assistance Fund is a $173 million fund from the American Rescue Plan. It's available through September 30th of 2025. It is intended to assist low to moderate income homeowners and specifically to prevent avoidable foreclosure and housing instability. There is a target within the Treasury guidance that asks that 60% of the fund be targeted to socially disadvantaged populations. And also, I missed it in here, but 100% AMI. So really, the fund is intended to serve a fairly low income homeowner. And the socially disadvantaged has been defined by Treasury, but I think pretty much everybody knows what that means. Communities of color. I think that includes Islanders, Native Americans, and so there's the host of things that are in there with that. But the Treasury has kind of put forth, and I believe the enabling statute actually had that in it as well. But there is a target for both 100% AMI and socially disadvantaged populations. The funds can pay for a variety of things. In particular, the way that we're implementing the first tranche of money is going to be mortgage, utilities, HOA, COA, property taxes, insurance. There are other things in there which include repairs. Repairs is a little bit of a tricky one. That's the etc. And some of you may have questions about that. Repairs is going to be a little bit more difficult to implement than the rest of these things that are related just straight to the property itself. U.S. Treasury guidance for us was updated on August 2nd of 2021. So we had some early guidance come out in June, and then they updated that guidance in August. And I would say that there is still a lot of ambiguity in the guidance, which is why it's taking a little bit longer to implement things than we had hoped. We had hoped to be on the street by now, but we should be sometime in October, and we'll get into that as we roll down. But the full program will be launched later this year. We are using the pilot to kind of, figure out what's going on, or early in 2022. That will likely continue to be a collaboration between the Department of Commerce and the Housing Finance Commission, and really is kind of based on when Treasury approves our final submission. The pilot, which is what we're trying to implement right now, is about $11 million of that fund. It's $17 million in total, but a portion of that is going to housing counseling, a portion of that is going to legal aid, a portion of that is going to outreach, a portion of that is going to IT solutions, that it's going to stand up the entire program. And so the actual direct assistance component of that, and the, if you will, overhead associated with that direct assistance, is about $11 million. And that pilot is intended to, for lack of a better term, provide a proof of concept. And so what Rich and I have been working on over the last few months and discussing and kind of working out are, what are the initial parameters we're going to go in with, but how do we adjust those throughout the pilot on the fly to accommodate situations that we just don't know what we're going to see. The population of individuals who are in forbearance aren't necessarily hidden, but they're also not very present. It's not information that's highly available to us. The information of what exactly their situation is and what led to forbearance isn't known to us. What the level of arrearages are for these individuals, and whether or not that encompasses just the mortgage, or whether that encompasses additional assessments from homeowner associations or COAs, property taxes, and insurance, and what the landscape is exactly is somewhat unknown to us right now. And so we wanted to go in this with, I'll use this word a lot, fluidity. And so as we move down this road and as we implement these funds, we want to be somewhat fluid within the guidance by the Treasury and kind of foundational structures that are required for us to meet, but be somewhat fluid and flexible in how we address things, and when situations come up that may not have been contemplated by the original guidance that we put out, address those somewhat on the fly and as we can, either through the commission, through a combination of the commission and commerce, or some mechanism that we work out that will kind of be a backstop to things that don't fit into the box very well, as we expand that box and manipulate that box to kind of fit the needs of what we see. It's intended to provide immediate assistance and build capacity in the next 6 months. And really that next 6 months is right now, and will be through the end of the year. That work started fundamentally in July and will go through December. May continue on past that, but that again depends on when the full plan is approved. But the pilot is intended to carry us through when the full plan is approved. It is intended to maintain and enhance the existing network of programs, particularly the FFA, the housing counseling that's associated with the FFA, the civil legal aid that's associated with the FFA, and the hotline, Washington Homeownership Resource Center, which is the entry point to most things FFA. Our civil legal aid provider, Northwest Justice Project, does have a hotline of their own. But there are, some of those calls do come from our main hotline, the main state hotline. And that's kind of being a holding place right now. So, anytime anybody contacts me or contacts us about the program as it exists and what's available for them, essentially what we're doing is we are pushing them through the housing counselor and legal aid network. Having them as essentially the front end intake, having them collect the information that's related to those people. And as soon as we have the program available, they'll be in the place to be able to refer individuals into the program. And then as we go down this road, again, the entire intent of the pilot is to inform the future program implementation and what the final program is really going to look like. And I would even say that is still fluid. That would be the initial plan that's approved. It has always been and will continue to be Commerce's intent to kind of mold this program over time, because what we see today may not be in fact what we are looking at in a month from now or a year from now or 2 years from now. Again, this program runs through 2025. We have another 4 years to implement these funds. And while I imagine a vast majority of the funds will be implemented in the beginning, there is I think there's a lot of reasons right now to anticipate that, number one, the first wave may not be the only wave, and that there will be people in the future who are likely going to be needing funds. So the pilot structure, Commerce and the Commission have selected HomeSite to help deliver the pilot funds. We're working out what those details are right now. So, myself and Rich are working with HomeSite to kind of, work out what that scope of work looks like and what the mechanisms are that we need to put in place to get the direct assistance available and what that relationship and application might look like and all of the things that are related with implementing these funds. A term sheet, and that term is used, I would call that a program guidelines. The terminology actually comes from, for those of you who are familiar with the hardest hit funds, that terminology of a term sheet comes from those funds, but Washington State never participated in the hardest hit fund. So there's a lot of terminology that's being used nationally related with the Housing Assistance Fund that, it's kind of new to us, and, it's called a term sheet from the Treasury perspective, but I would call it program guidelines. We are working on those, and as soon as that's finalized, we'll go ahead and provide that to the Housing Counseling Network, the Legal Aid Network, so that they understand who will qualify for direct assistance through the pilot, and they can refer those individuals into HomeSite. But that will detail what the tree is that you have to go through essentially to qualify as a referral. One of the things that is something that we talked about is you must be facing an imminent risk of loss of housing. And the main reason for that, again, is this program is limited. And so if you have received, as an example, a notice of default, that will not qualify you for these funds. You do, unfortunately, have to be in a place where you've received a notice of trustee sale, or you've had a notice of trustee sale recorded against you. Or in the case of a shadow loan or some other form of housing, a couple of the examples that me and Rich have talked about, but we don't know exactly how to handle yet because they've never come through our program is, what about a houseboat? What about a mobile home? And so those are the types of things that we'll be figuring out really kind of on the fly, most likely when they come up, as what the equivalent of that is. We imagine it's probably going to be a court action, but there may be something else out there that we're unfamiliar with that, would equate to, an effective notice of a trustee sale on a deed of trust property versus a non-deed of trust property. The money itself is going to be a mix of a grant and a loan. And this was a very eloquent solution that I believe the commission came up with. So I'll give them credit for the solution because, as me and Rich discussed this originally, when you have a break in an amount of a grant, you have the potential for this oddity to occur. Where, as an example, let's say, we're going to grant the first 10K in, funds to the individual, but they end up with needing 10,350 as an example. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to put a $350 loan on a property. Just the time, energy, and effort, it just doesn't make any sense. And so really what we came up with was this break between 10,000 and 12,000. So if you do not exceed $12,000 in total for your award, then your entire award would be a grant. But if you exceed $12,000, meaning that you get to 12,001, the grant portion of your reward will be limited to 10,000, and then the remainder will be a loan. And effectively what that does is that means that we won't ever have a loan of less than $2,001. So, if using that same example, if everything came out to $12,001, you would, revert back to $10,000 in a loan and $2,001 $10,000 in a grant and $2,001 in a loan. I'm hoping that makes sense because we can't see you, and we don't know, if there's anything going on in the chat. I guess we don't have the chat open either. So, put stuff in the chat if that doesn't make sense, and we can talk about it a little bit more. The maximum initial award that we're going to be looking at is $50,000. And then again, that same thing. We don't know exactly what the landscape of this is. We don't know what the total need will be. And so for our purposes, that is a pliable number. There's likely to be some way that an individual who may need more than that to secure their housing may be able to achieve more than that. But the initial standard, the happy path, if you will, if everything meets this, there's no reason to talk to anybody else. You can get an award up to $50,000. And that would require no additional approvals or any conversations anywhere else. If it goes above the 50,000, there may be a need for a conversation at some level. So continued, again, this is kind of a foundational item, and that comes from the Treasury. In order to receive an award, which is different than receiving counseling and legal aid. Counseling and legal aid is from our perspective, we're trying to open that up to everybody. We'll see what Treasury says about that in our plan. Again, this is one of the places where they're a little bit ambiguous in how their guidelines could be interpreted, but for an actual award, we don't think there's any ambiguity. You must be an owner-occupied property, and the borrower must be at or below 150% AMI. Those two things are non-negotiable. It must be an owner-occupied property, and you must be below 150% AMI. The question that we haven't defined in that yet is when that income test is performed, whether or not it's right now looking forward, whether or not it was during the time of the impact of COVID. You may have been below 150% AMI because of a lack of job income or some other reason during the pandemic, which really is still going on. But during your forbearance, let's say, and now that you exit your forbearance, maybe you've recovered somewhat and you're above 150% AMI. And so there is a lack of clarification in regarding specifically when we do the test, and what time frame that test has to be done on. So the pilot will have to figure that out initially, and then again, that's something that we'll propose to Treasury as we figure out what we're doing with the pilot. So we are currently finalizing the eligibility requirements. Again, the pilot is intended to be as flexible as feedback is received, as flexible as possible. Again, there are some foundational structural components. The Treasury has said these are things that you kind of must do. And so the 150, the owner occupied, those things must be met. But, there is also a tremendous amount, again, ambiguity, which means there is a tremendous amount of ways to interpret the guidance right now. And we are trying to interpret that guidance what best meets the needs of the state, the citizens of the state of Washington, and also to fully utilize the foreclosure fairness network that already exists and has existed in the state for a very, very long time. And so homeowners will be referred by a foreclosure fairness program, housing counselor, legal aid provider. They'll push them through the Washington Homeownership Resource Center. The Washington Homeownership Resource Center will identify somebody who serves that particular client's area. And typically they do that live on the phone. But again, Northwest Justice Project, who is currently the only legal aid provider in that program, they do have their own hotline as well. And so Northwest Justice Project may receive those calls directly, or they may receive referrals from the Washington Homeownership Resource Center when that staff can identify that the particular issues that are that homeowner is communicating is beyond the level of a housing counselor. And so what's coming next? First, we'll roll out the half pilot. That's really right now. We would hope to have that. We had hoped to have it done by October 1st and on the street by October 1st, but it's just not there yet. I think we are very, very close. And it certainly, I anticipate it will be sometime in October, but I don't want to commit to a specific date yet because we are still working on the scopes of work and some other things. We'll revise the pilot plan as appropriate throughout October through December. We'll assess the pilot implementation and draft the full program plan throughout that exact same time frame. We will hold another public meeting as we draft that final plan. Obviously, that'll to be determined because we don't know when that will be ready yet, but it'll be prior. It likely is going to be sometime in November. And then we plan to submit the half plan on or before December 31st of 2021. We had originally provided them a October 31st date. There is no way for us to be informed by the pilot at this point in time by any rollout of the pilot, to submit a full half plan by the end of the month. So there's no requirement for the date that we submit the plan. Ultimately, Treasury has communicated in other communications to us that it's up to us to tell them when we're going to submit the plan. And so we're going to attempt to revise that date from October to December. And then the rollout of the full half plan will be either later this year, depending on when we submit that full plan, or more likely early in 2022, based on when Treasury approves it. And that is it for us. Here is the link to the website where most all of the information related to the pilot and everything else is located. It is on Commerce's site currently. And I think probably likely there will be some sister site to this on the commission's website as we kind of implement more things through the commission. And so at that point in time, I will stop sharing my screen, Devin, and we can roll with whatever questions are in the chat.
Sure.
I don't know if we can open it up to. Is there
Nathan, before we
Yeah.
jump into that, I
Yeah.
was just going to offer a little background perspective in case our viewing audience isn't completely up to speed on everything that we've done. And so I would just be going back a little bit in time. But one of the things that Commerce and the Commission looked at when this HAF program came through is that we've been here before. And so is the network, 2010. While this is different than the foreclosure mess of 2010, this is not unlike that. And what we found in that time was the most effective way to keep homeowners prevent avoidable foreclosures was to use a robust network of default housing counselors and civil legal aid, and the mediation program. The mediation program was created by Representative Orwell in the legislature and offers a unique opportunity for the state of Washington. Not many other states have anything like it, that gives a chance for a homeowner and a servicer to meet one-on-one. Using our default counseling network, we're able to really explore the options to give borrowers a representative and an advocate in this process that allows us to make sure that the things that the servicers are offering are in the best interest of the homeowner, that all of the options are explored, that the servicers are making the right decision. And it's an unqualified success. And I think that even if we could have some servicers on here, they would say that they agree, that they find the counseling program, the network, the mediation program, everything we have to be a major plus for servicing. And making sure that we can get through these things. This money is great. This money is necessary. This money is targeted at lower income and for those that need cash to get to the next level and to make themselves whole, or perhaps build some equity, or to address the impacts of COVID. But we felt the basis of this needed to be using that existing network that we've had for over a decade now, and our tried and true method of supporting homeowners by giving them an advocate and somebody to talk to and somebody to share their experience with, and to navigate the often confusing process of submitting documents and that type of stuff. So that was really the bedrock of what we had. And we felt that while we've seen other programs like emergency rental assistance and other federal programs come through where money's just tried to push to the street, hardest hit fund, and other states we've seen where it's actually more servicer driven, where the servicer is requesting the money. We felt the first step was to really bolster our network of support for actual homeowners so they can evaluate the options, and that this funding will be an invaluable tool to come in a sense, over the top of that to really help deliver relief and keep as many people in the home. This is limited amount of funds. It can only reach so many people, but by strengthening this network, we can even take that and exponentially support Washington State homeowners. And we feel that's really important and the bedrock of our programs.
All right. We do have a couple questions. The first one is
the 10 to 12K.
Can you explain the grant for the first $10,000 to
Yeah.
$12,000 a little further?
Yeah, so let me bracket it out this way. Maybe this will make a little more sense, and I'll put some real numbers to it. So if you are between $0 and $10,000, it will be a grant. If you are between $10,000 and $12,000, it will still be a grant. The full amount will still be a grant. If you exceed $12,000, only $10,000 of your total award will be a grant, and the remainder will be a loan. And so putting that into, real numbers, you need $7,500, that would be a grant. You need $10,564, that will be a grant. You need $12,037, $10,000 would be a grant, and $2,037 would be a loan. And so really there's just this tier that gap between $10,000 and $12,000 is intended for a single purpose, and that is to prevent a loan of less than $2,000. And so, anything up to $12,000 is going to be a grant if you don't exceed $12,000. However, if and when you exceed $12,000 in your total award, the grant portion of your award will only be $10,000, and the rest will be a loan. And really the only reason why that $2,000 is in there is to prevent a loan of less than $2,000. So again, if we had a hard stop at $10,000 for a grant and you needed $10,325, we would literally have to put a loan on your property of $325 if we didn't have this mechanism in there to, kind of basically extend the grant until we hit $12,000. And if we hit $12,000, then the grant is limited to 10. Or if we go above $12,000, it's still limited. The intent is the grant is $10,000. The $12,000 is only there to, again, prevent this small loan from being there if we just exceed 10,000 by, less than between $0 and $2,000. And so it's just this mechanism to prevent small loans from being put on properties. I mean, $2,000 is still kind of a small loan, but it's not like putting a loan of a couple $100 on a property. I mean, that just doesn't make sense to service a loan that small. So hopefully that makes a little bit more sense in that, is that, the gap between 10 and 12 is simply to prevent small loans.
Nathan, I was enthralled in listening to every word that you said, but I may have missed it. Did we discuss the terms of the loans? That they were silent and
we have not. So yes, thank you, Rich. So for those people who wonder what the loan looks like, it is a 0% deferred loan. So there's no payments. It'll be deferred until cash out, refi, or sale. Potentially some other transfers may trigger a repayment as well, but fundamentally it's not triggered. Payment on the loan is not triggered, and there's no interest on the loan until there is a disposition of the property effectively.
All right.
Thank you.
And we got another question. Can you explain why the requirement for assistance that the homeowners have to be so far past due before getting assistance? When home buyers are this far past due, it's hard to communicate with them. They are scared, frustrated, embarrassed. Also, the fees associated when you are in the process of a trustee sale.
Yeah. So, again, and we didn't talk about much about this, and, a lot of this is just a little bit second hat to myself and Rich, but you need to think about these as really two separate programs. One is the pilot, which is only $11 million. We don't have enough money at $11 million to be proactive about our approach. That $11 million is for the pure purpose of stabilizing people who are at risk right now of losing their home, and to essentially allow us time to get to the place with everybody else where we have the rest of the $150 million available to us, and we have a more robust plan and a more active and proactive approach. But for right now, we have $11 million, and that's it. And the intent of that money is to prevent somebody from losing a home, because what I would not want to do, particularly right now, is run out of money being proactive and then have people lose their home while we're waiting for the full plan to be achieved. And so the purpose of that right now is to prevent anybody from losing their home while the full plan is being melded and approved and going through the process with Treasury. We believe that the vast majority of people won't exit forbearance until January, as it sits right now. January 1st will be the big date. And really, this is a stopgap measure to get us to that date, where hopefully we have a little bit more proactivity available to us in the future plan.
Right.
Nathan, I'd add to that, and as the question kind of went on, is that what we're anticipating is that either you're a recorded notice of trustee sale, which is a public record, or you're a court action, which is also a public record in most cases, for like COA dues and utilities and things like that. We're aware of some municipalities and already filing foreclosure actions for unpaid garbage and things like that. We've seen that up north. That gives us an opportunity also for outreach to actually use public records to our advantage. To your comment about difficult to find those that may have already reached this kind of point of no return, I think we have an opportunity with this program to actually find some of those people based on the public records and do some direct outreach to them. And again, back to Nathan's point, we're looking to prevent literally losing your home in the next month or two while the rest of the plan's being developed.
Another question for Rich. Do you anticipate there will be additional counseling agencies added around the state?
Yes. Don't see how we can't. Also are already getting some outreach from other counseling agencies. So yeah, I think that that's definitely the case. We are at, just in a generalization, maybe a third, a half of what we were in 2010. It's probably even a little less than that. We have even fewer. But there's some agencies that got out of the business over the last couple of years, but it would not surprise me to see them come back. And like I said, I have been approached by some, and we're working with them right now to figure out how to get them onboarded.
Great, thanks for that. And another question, would the homeowner be able to cover the difference if they have funds? For example, the need is $12,500. Can the homeowner come in with the $500 to get the $12,000 grant?
Of course. Nothing would prevent them from doing that, but we didn't want to force them to do that.
And here's another question. You're talking about the homeowner getting a grant up to $10,000 to $12,000, then the rest being a loan. Who collects on the loan?
Hasn't been determined yet. But I mean, likely it'll come back to Commerce, but that's one of the answers to the questions that we don't have. So a couple of things will have to happen. Number one, Treasury will have to agree that we can even keep those funds. And if they don't, then we will pivot and we will write off all of the loans, and everything will be a grant if Treasury doesn't allow us to keep the funds, and essentially repurpose the funds for the same purpose, for DPA assistance, for other, housing assistance needs that come downstream as this thing continues to unwind. So, a large part of the answer to the question lies with Treasury. And once we get the answer to the question from them, then we can go through the process of determining if we're allowed to repurpose the funds, how we're going to repurpose the funds, and where those funds would be repurposed through. And so then that would include another public process that we would likely have to go through to be able to repurpose those funds for those things. And so there's a whole process that will be involved in this. But the number one thing that we still don't have an answer to yet, and it hasn't been answered in any other plan because nobody has gotten a comment back in the entire country on their plan yet, is whether or not Treasury will allow us to consider that a program income and would allow us to repurpose those funds. And that's going to be the first hurdle.
All right. Another question. What is the max loan amount if arrears exceed the $12,000?
Right now it's 50 as the base amount for the Happy Path, and beyond that, it would have to go through some type of committee review, some type of, oversight review to see whether or not we would exceed that amount and the reasons for that. Right now, we don't have a set ceiling per se of what that committee could approve up to. I imagine there will be some number eventually, maybe not, but that will be an ongoing conversation between Commerce and the Commission management and figuring out, what that looks like. But the Happy Path, for lack of a better word, is $50,000, and then we don't have an upper limit behind that as to what could be approved by an alternative process.
And Nathan, I'll just for clarification, is that when we're saying 50, that's 10 grant, 40 loan.
Correct.
All right, thank you for that. In the last session, a speaker mentioned that rental assistance funds that aren't being spent are going to be reclaimed and reallocated. Can you speak to our timeline for the half related to approval and fund use versus Treasury potentially reallocating funds, our funds to another state?
These funds are available to us through 2025, so I don't see that happening. I don't see any repurposing of funds happening at all at any point in time, not until after 2025. I mean, I imagine if we had spent, you know, using a ridiculous number here, but $6 by the time we get to 2023, maybe something would happen. But the rental assistance program and the homeowner assistance program are two completely separate programs. And I would highly doubt, because of the way that it was delivered to us, that these particular funds would be repurposed anytime at any point in time in the near future. The rental assistance funds need to be on the street today because the eviction moratorium is running out. That is somewhat true of the housing plan, but again, Treasury hasn't even given us a deadline for our plan. I don't think they could repurpose funds until they looked at our plan and saw what the need was and how we were addressing the need. But I can't imagine that until somewhere well down in the future. Rich?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I guess theoretically it would be there, because I think the thing to consider is that this is, from Treasury's perspective, probably fairly similar to the emergency rental assistance, because it's Treasury running both of them. And a lot of the delay that some agencies have had with the rental assistance is working with Treasury to get the guidelines to figure out if they're allowed to do certain things in their programs, not laying it on the feet of Treasury. But Treasury focus is partially on the emergency rental assistance because it just is a higher priority. So I think it's some of the same team working on both of them. And I could definitely add from our perspective on the national calls and that type of stuff, where there are some states that have moved a little quicker with what we call a servicer oriented program, where they're just actually working closely with their servicers or their own loans to move some funds, but we're not behind anybody else by any means. We're probably, I would say, right, probably Nathan, average, maybe even a little bit further, because I think our plan's a little bit more robust than some others, but some of the other states are kind of struggling with the same things that we are, of really getting it out on the street, but no inordinate delays by any means and really anybody's part at this point.
Yeah, I think this is a I'm not sure how to say it, a thoughtfulness way to say it, I guess. But I think when you look at the infrastructure that exists in this state through the FFP, we are in a significantly better place than almost every state in the country in relation to implementing this fund through that program in a thoughtful way. And in the way that, quite frankly, on the national calls, Treasury has communicated that they wished it would be done. We are I think we may be the only state in the country that is requiring homeowners to go through a housing counselor or legal aid provider before they can be referred over. Some are allowing it to occur, but I think we may be the only state that is actually requiring it. And Treasury on a number of calls is been very supportive of the approach, not talking specifically about Washington, but just simply talking about housing counseling in general and how they think that is a large component of what needs to happen. They didn't quite deliver that in the way that they delivered the money, but that's why we're going to go back and ask for more money for that.
All right, I think that is all of the questions. We did have a question about the rent assistance funds being used for overdue utility bills. I did give them the link to the rent assistance program. I do know a portion of those funds can be used for utility assistance, but they should, of course, check with the program providers in their county.
Yeah, the other thing that I would mention, because I'm not familiar with the rental assistance program at all, or what can be done with it, but the other fund that is available out there for utility assistance is the low energy housing assistance program, energy assistance program, and so commonly referred to as LIHEAP. And so for whoever that individual is, if specifically they're looking for some form of utility help, those really are the two mechanisms that are going to do that right now. It is unlikely that half would step in and do anything with utilities unless, again, particularly right now, it was specifically a situation that was causing a foreclosure. But barring that situation, which it takes a long time to get to that situation, barring that situation, we are going to let the other funds that are available for utilities try and address the utility situation before we stepped in.
Nathan, I'd only add to that, that is something that we've been cautioned on by Treasury, is duplication of efforts and duplication of funds. They're very concerned about that because of the huge amount of federal money that's out on the street. Treasury has said they do not want to see homeowner assistance funds creating a program that would have been better served from another set of funds or is already being served. So when you start to get into that little bit of a gray area, that's something we have to be cognizant that we're either making sure that other funds hadn't addressed this problem, or if so, what were the reasons why they didn't access those funds?
Yeah, I shared out the utility assistance page at Commerce so they can get more information on that with them. I'm not seeing any other questions quite yet. Did any of these bring up some closing statements that you guys thought of here that you want to wrap up with? We have about 10 minutes left.
Not really. I mean, it's coming. I am just kind of out of curiosity, Devin, how many people are in the session?
We have 85 viewers.
Oh, okay.
Yay!
Wow. That's a larger number. Okay. So yeah, I mean, it you know, the one parting, comment that I would make is that, it's coming. We're really, really close to putting this out. There are still just a few things that need to be taken care of. There are certainly some people who at the end of July likely did run out of their forbearance potentially, or, at the end of September, not at the end of July. Limited, but still there are some folks out there who need this money, and we are doing our best to get it out on the street as quickly as possible. But we also want to be thoughtful about it as we put it out there. So a lot of pieces are in place. It's just a matter of just kind of putting those final pieces and the final components of those pieces in place to stand this thing up.
I just close with, I think a lot of credit goes to Nathan and his team at Commerce. They're doing a lot of work on this and taking the lead on it. It hasn't been easy. We would love to hear your thoughts and comments and ideas. You know where to find us. If not, we'll make sure that you do. We're not well hidden. But also some big thanks to our network, the team that we're building on the backs of, our counselors, the hotline, civil legal aid. They have stood up and said, yes, they'll help and they'll make it work. They believe in it. But we're asking them to take leaps of faith. They want to see this solidified as fast as you guys want to see it out there, because they have programs that they'll need to adapt and help structure for this to be successful. But I think, and I think Nathan will agree, we've never thought that this program, our underlying bedrock program, is anything but the right place to build on and would be what would ensure success of this program and help the most homeowners in the state of Washington.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I don't think we've ever even contemplated another path other than that network. So, which is a testament to that network.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate you popping in. Hope we answered your questions. Reach out. Nathan, thanks for taking the lead on this. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
Kevin, thanks for moderating.
Not a problem. I think that's it. A lot of people are saying great session, lots of info, and they're thanking you.
Well, thank you guys. It's absolutely our pleasure.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you all. Great job.